they're planning to, which is with a horrendous attack, especially since they've worked so hard to strip away early warning, missile defense, and so forth. Then the Israelis may say, well, we have to respond. And the only way that we can respond and make any difference is to use at least a nuclear weapon, whether it's 5 kiloton or 10 kiloton, whatever it is, and against a specific target. Now, what would that target be? I don't know. I mean, they can pick cities. We are increasingly bombing cities. When we talk about targets, we're killing a lot of civilians in Iran now. And that's something that happens when your effort against military targets either fails or doesn't turn out to provide the outcome that you hoped for. I mean, even during World War II, you could hit lots of things that the German armed forces utilized, didn't seem to have the effect. And so we started bombing cities. Eventually, somebody got around to bombing, infrastructure, railroads. That helped somewhat, slowed down distribution, bombed refineries and the oil connection. That was very critical. In fact, if we'd done nothing else except deprive Germany of oil and transportation on its rails, we'd have won the war sooner. But I don't know what the thinking is right now inside the building about what to do next with Iran. But when I looked recently at a list of cities, Tabriz and Isfahan and so forth, I was a little disturbed by that, because that tells me, well, we're starting to hit what we think we can find and will have an effect, but it's not necessarily military anymore. That's what happened to us during the Kosovo air campaign. We ran out of legitimate military targets, and we began bombing anything else that could be remotely connected to a military action. So that meant the Yugo factory, if you know what the Yugo was, an automobile produced in Yugoslavia, which was hardly the Mercedes-Benz of communism. And that thing suddenly became a danger to us. Well, the factory could be a danger. Why? Well, it could be retooled and turn out military equipment. So we bombed the Yugo factory. I guess I'm beginning to see elements to that. I hope that's not true. I just don't know. But the bottom line is that when all else fails and you have a nuclear weapon at your disposal, as the Israelis do, there will be an inclination to use it. Now, I was mentioning Gavir and Smotrich because they were both saying, well, what the Americans are doing is their thing. We're worried about our war in Lebanon, our war here in our area, and the Americans, they're worried about Iran. And that's not our focus right now. And tried to sort of interpret events to say, America is fighting the Iran war. We're fighting everything else. We're not necessarily connected anymore. Well, Mario, that's absurd. Israel would go under after 2 days without resupply, refurbishment. Their military industrial complex is just not that large. We have to provide most of the missiles, ammunition, equipment, and so forth. But I think it sets the stage for the notion, if the Israelis decide to use a weapon, that will, they hope, provide Donald Trump with some plausible deniability. Well, we did this on our own. We didn't consult with Donald Trump. It's not his fault. Well, good luck with that one. We are joined at the hip. The notion that we can escape responsibility for that kind of action is absurd. The rest of the world will laugh at that. But I think that's a risk right now. And we'll know more after Netanyahu visits with President Trump and issues new march orders.
Well, after Trump's post, where he said he'll destroy one bridge or one power plant for every ship the Iranians attack, Ghalibaf responded, "The equation of this war is clear, either all or none. In a region where we do not sell oil, no one will sell oil. If our security is not ensured, no infrastructure will be safe, and the security of the strait is in the absence of American forces. We have repeatedly said that the situation of the strait will not return to pre-war conditions." So this is Ghalibaf pretty much saying that we will not give up the Strait of Hormuz, which is what Trump is requesting. And if Trump attacks our infrastructure, we will attack the infrastructure of the region, as they've said before, time and time and time again, and as they've delivered on these threats before, including last week. So, the obvious question is, will Trump, do you think, deliver on these specific threats? He's already struck their bridges and their power plants last week. And will Iran retaliate as they've said they would? because they did that last week. And what does that mean for the region?
Unfortunately, I think the last thing that President Trump will do is say, I've done as much as I can do. And under the circumstances, we're not going to get a resolution, but it is in the interest of the world, as well as the United States, for reasons of economy and finance, that I break off this war. Now, that's the last thing he wants to do. That's the last thing that he will do. So to answer your question, he will go back and forth in the future again and again and again until he's got nothing left. Until the situation at home is so hostile to the war and our economic condition is so bad that he can't keep it up. He'll continue until he has no missiles to fire. And the sad part is that demonstrates the complete contempt in which he holds, unfortunately, people around the world, not just his own people, but everybody. And this has always been an easy solution for him. But again, he's under duress. He seems reluctant under any circumstances to contradict his Israeli backers. And again, if you're in his position right now, he knows that the midterm elections will probably produce a Congress that is very ready to dispose of him. In other words, impeach him. And he may say, well, if I break off this war and end it for all the right reasons, I will not be rewarded with support. They'll still get rid of me. And I'll have no support from the people that got me here. And the people that got me here are the people that are pushing the war with Iran. Call it the Israel lobby, the Jewish lobby, the Zionist lobby, whatever you want to call it. This collection of billionaires and financiers around the world that are bound and determined to destroy Iran, get control of the oil resources in the region, and essentially run global finance. They're backing him, and he needs them. They have enough power, financial influence in the United States that they could rescue him from impeachment, in his mind.
Shit. That's so okay. So, how does he care about the Gulf? And if so, how much? So I know it sounds like I've asked this question many times, but I think it's a very important question because Iran is betting on the horizontal escalation striking the Gulf to deter future U.S. aggression. So the big question should be, how much does Trump care about his allies in the Gulf, which are close U.S. allies? They hold U.S. treasuries, they have U.S. bases, they've invested in Jared Kushner's fund, they've invested in Trump's companies as well. These matter to Trump. But that's something I've been thinking a lot about as well.
Donald Trump is probably more concerned with something else that his advisors have no doubt told him. They probably said, look, boss, if we walk away from this and we admit that we did not win, this is the end of our military supremacy in the world. We will be challenged everywhere.
Yeah.
This is not going to end with the Gulf. So you can't just leave. You have to stay this. A stalemate, which is probably what he's being told. If you can't get an outright victory, a stalemate that holds everyone hostage to the war in the Gulf is better than walking away. Now, I don't agree with that. I think walking away is absolutely the intelligent solution. But you have these kinds of conversations at that level. You've got to go back to 1968 after Richard Nixon was elected. He sat down with the Joint Chiefs, and they all unanimously recommended that we withdraw from Vietnam. And he consulted with Kissinger, and Kissinger allegedly told him, look, you can't just do that, for some of the same reasons we're discussing now. What message does that send to the Soviets? Well, we now know in retrospect, the Soviets were shocked that we went in there to begin with. They thought we were very stupid to do that. And if we had left, they would have said, well, that's a smart move to make. They would not have taken that as evidence for our weakness and started a war against us. But I think we're in a similar position right now in Washington with people who are saying you can't just leave. You can't just walk away from this. So we're back to stalemate or victory. Well, victory is not coming. Now, that's where the Israelis come in. The Israelis say, we'll take care of this. We'll launch a nuclear weapon. That's Pandora's box. Mario, when that happens, we have no idea where that will go. You're now talking about China, Pakistan, Russia, any number of other major powers in the world who are going to say, wait a minute, no one signed up for this. Because remember, even though it was not necessarily codified per se in law, it's been widely understood since 1945 that nuclear weapons are really designed to protect your national territory. And Brezhnev said in 1968, he said, what we have, we hold. In other words, we're not giving up the gains of World War II. Now, 20 years later, that was all gone. It fell apart on its own. But everybody acknowledged, got it, we're not going to go to war over that. And I think we all understood that you don't raise the nuclear threat unless your own home territory is under direct threat of nuclear attack. So I hope that that doesn't happen. And I hope that President Trump, no matter what Mr. Netanyahu says, stands his ground on that one and agrees there will be no use of a nuclear weapon. Now, there's something else, and I know that you talk to Larry Johnson a lot, and Larry has great sources. He's not the only one, and Pepe Escobar has great sources. There are rumors that the Iranians may either push over the threshold and develop a nuclear warhead or receive some assistance with it from Pakistan or somebody else. And that someone is considering detonating a nuclear device in the southern part of Iran, in the desert somewhere potentially, as a demonstration of what Iran can do. I have to urge anyone who's considering this to forget it. That will not have the desired effect. I know the Israelis, and if you see a nuclear weapon detonate on Iranian soil somewhere, they will attack immediately and devastate the country. So don't do it. Don't even think about it. Because I think there are really people out there that believe, well, if we demonstrate this, they'll leave us alone. Not a chance. The opposite will be the case. So nuclear weapons should remain off the table. And the key factor, the key player in all of this is Donald Trump. And he has to do what he personally regards as unthinkable. The good news is we're close to the bottom in terms of weapons and munitions and exhaustion, and we're close to the economic financial crisis. Those things are powerful incentives to get out and end this war. That may ultimately be the key consideration in Donald Trump's mind.
I was hoping we'd be talking about Cuba by now, Colonel.
Oh, geez.